Do you want to know what's going round? See what's the talk of the town on Real Talk on the radio today.
You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from the Bishop West Real Estate Mobile Tower. And I've got Commander Paulus on the broadcast today, but I want to send a special shout out to our advertisers, Box Insurance Company on Toledo Blade, Lions Title and Trust on Toledo Blade, and also Remax Palm Realty for sponsoring our FM tower that soon will be going up at Public Works, and we will be gearing up for yet another hurricane season here in Northport. And we are the emergency broadcasting network for the citizens of Northport, and we're happy to be part of the EOC and really contribute back to our great city and the surrounding areas. So, Commander Paulus, this is John Rawlings. Please give a quick introduction of yourself and a little bit of background.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me. Currently, I am one of the commanders here with the Northport Police Department. So in my current role, I oversee a day shift patrol rotation and pretty much most of the police activity that occurs in the city during my shift. So I get to have quite a bit of input on how things are going here, which is wonderful. Started my law enforcement career back in 2016 with the Fort Lauderdale Police Department. I worked there for a couple of years, about a little over 2.5 years. Worked road patrol on midnights, had a lot of fun. Moved to Northport here back in 2018 and came on with the Northport PD. Worked patrol here for a couple of years. Was fortunate enough to get myself into the Detective Bureau, so I did some investigative work for about 3 years, and promoted to the position of sergeant back within about 2 years ago now. And I actually was fortunate enough to stay in the Detective Bureau and supervise those that I had just had the pleasure of working alongside with, which was a really fun time. And I had just recently gotten promoted to this position as the commander back in August of last year. So it's been a fun ride so far.
You've come a long way in a short period of time. 2016, right? Is the start date.
Yep.
So 16. That's a fast 9 years.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people that I've really been able to lean on as mentors throughout my time, both in law enforcement and just outside of in the civilian world of really kind of helping me navigate certain aspects of the career, certain things I really needed to focus on. And yeah, it's been a little quick on the on the upswing, but I always enjoy a challenge, and it's been a good time. So
all right, so I'm gonna little tricky question here to start you out with. I want you to name 2 things you liked about the Fort Myers gig that you had, and then I want you to name 2 things that you like about the current position with Northport.
Okay. So with Fort Lauderdale, it was a very, very fast-paced environment, especially as a brand new cop and really wanting to get all the fun stuff that everybody hears about, whether that be car chases and all the wild stuff. It was a good time. So I was enjoying the tempo and how things were going. It got a little overwhelming at times, but again, sometimes the challenge is fun. There were, the group of people that I worked with directly. I had it was a wonderful squad. We all got, had a lot of camaraderie together. It was a great time. So it was overall a great place. I was sad to leave, but it was, just kind of more of a location decision versus employment. And when I came here, this Northport's like a family. It's obviously it's growing now. It's getting much larger, but it genuinely does have that family type dynamic, and that's all the way from Chief Garrison to all the way down to everybody else here. It's growing considerably now compared to where it was in 18, but that type of mentality really stays. And then here, everybody, and that's kind of one of my favorite things about the position that I hold now, is there really is an environment of mentoring and teaching and coaching. And, every supervisor's job is to train those that are subordinate to him to take that, take my position. So I really, that's been something that's been focused on here, is really ensuring that there's personal growth, there's professional growth. And that's been fostered since day one when I got here.
So what's the difference between, I know the fast pace, and I know the dynamics are different from
Mm-hmm.
Fort Lauderdale to here.
Mm-hmm.
Been there myself. I enjoy Fort Lauderdale, but there is a complete difference
Oh, yeah.
between those two cities.
Mm-hmm.
In saying that, what dynamics do you enjoy of our community in comparison? Because that fast pace, that I think heavier, and I want to say this cautiously, heavier crime area. I
Sure.
think there's more intensity over there than
Mm-hmm.
we have here. How do you feel like that's weighed in on some of the things that you're looking at here as a commander, and your feedback to upper management?
Well, I mean, we obviously, again, even since I've been here in 18, the population growth that we've seen has, unparalleled compared to a lot of areas. And
Absolutely.
even just the traffic on the roadway, and obviously with more people, just inevitably comes more, more crime, just because there's more people. It's just a basic statistics numbers. Something I love about this working here is the community support that we have. I've never experienced before, whether that be, people just saying thank you, when you're passing them, coming in and out and getting coffee. And I don't think any of us do this job for a thank you, but it's certainly nice to hear. And it's nice to know that the community has your back, and they really do with us, which is wonderful. With that being, even having the time to, on a Saturday morning, if you see some kids playing basketball, go shoot a couple of baskets with them, or, do things like that. Our community policing unit does wonderful, wonderful things with, especially, all throughout the year, but with the holidays. We do shop with a cop events, and, get to walk those kids around, or do, we've had requests where, we had one little boy, which comes to mind. I can't recall his name, but his mom had emailed us and said, hey, my son's having his 5th birthday and he loves the police. Is there any chance that you guys can just swing by for a second and just say hi? So my squad was actually the ones that went and did it. And we had, I think, 7 or 8 patrol cars all lined up on the road, lights and sirens, going down the street. And you saw his face from the backyard where they were all playing, and he came out and was ecstatic. And that's the kind of stuff that makes this job, worth it a lot of times, where, we end up seeing so many negatives and so many bad things. We encounter most people on their worst day. So being able to do something like that, and just for a matter of 20 minutes and brighten somebody's day like that, it's pretty awesome.
There's something different about a big city with a small city feel, and I think we have that here. Fort Lauderdale, were you able to do anything like that in Fort Lauderdale at that level?
Not a whole lot. I mean, once in a great while, maybe. But there was not a lot of opportunity to be able to get out and sometimes, unfortunately, just engage with the remainder of the community. We deal with, call it 10% of the community over there that was having, the need for us to encounter them. Everyone else, all the kids in the neighborhoods, and was a little bit different for me working on midnight shift. There probably was some more opportunities during the daytime. But the community events and things like that we do here is exponential compared to a lot of other places, especially big cities like I've seen.
So we have a lot of citizens who are scared of growth, and
Mm-hmm.
our city is destined to grow.
Sure.
We're slated to max out at 250. It could be more than that by the time they're done. And do you feel like we're gonna feel like Fort Lauderdale when that happens?
I don't think so. I think that the overall layout of how Northport is, it's obviously much more residential, and sure there are, there's some commercial aspects to it. I think the biggest difference is the tourist attractions, especially on a lot of the cities on the East Coast. Obviously during the summer times, everybody comes for spring break and all those kinds of things. So you see a lot of those can severely impact the city, and the financial district in that area almost doubled the population during the daytime, during Monday through Friday weekdays. Whereas here it's again not as dramatic. Change and growth is inevitable, I guess, anywhere. Our mission is to grow along with it, as is the fire departments, as is every other service within the city. So our executive staff has made efforts to make sure that we're growing in that same respect, to make sure that as that population grows, that the citizens are receiving the same level of service that we can give them now that we gave them 5 years ago, right, based on having more police officers working, having better resources, and all those things. So that's something that on the forethought is super important. So, and they've been doing that since day one.
So a quick reminder to any of the citizens watching on YouTube, if you have any questions at all pertaining to Northport Police Department, feel free. The one thing I will tell you as citizens, the questions that come in, please make them about the police department now, not about any growth of buildings or anything in the future. Commander is not privileged to have that conversation on air, and we don't want to make him feel uncomfortable and present him with a question that's out there that you may have that leads us down that path. There's some importance that people need to understand about your position too, because the sense that you started in the 2016 and then went into detective. Can you talk about that transition and then into the commander role that kind of gives you a well-rounded point of view from different aspects there?
Sure, of course. So, everybody starts on patrol. That's that's the yep, bread and butter. So it's no matter what position you hold in this agency, and I'm a perfect example of that now. I'm back in a regular uniform, with I do some office work, sure, but I love to get out and spend time with the guys out on the road. Going from a patrol officer's position to detective was eye-opening. I thought I knew it all or had a lot of knowledge. So the major differences of working long-term investigations versus handling just your calls for service and then moving on to the next one. It can be a little bit daunting at first if you don't manage your time well. You tend to you're continually getting cases assigned to you as quickly as you're clearing them out, as soon as you're clearing them out. I thoroughly enjoyed investigations, working long-term cases. I've always kind of been that curious person. You always want to know the why, or all the what and the why, and that's sometimes is the best place to do it. It really hones being able to talk to people from all walks of life, because you're always whether you're doing a formal interview or just speaking to someone more casually, it gives you a bigger picture of what goes on and how those types of things can unfold. So when I was promoted and came back to road patrol, with investigations, a lot of times you have the benefit of time on your side. There's very few instances, aside from a tactical situation, where you have to make an immediate split decision without having to weigh some more options. You have a little bit more of that ability to sit and ponder a bit, whereas on patrol, things happen very fast, so you don't always have the amount of time that you would like. So having the investigative ability, I think, has made it an easier time to make the snappier decisions that need to be made, and as well just to have a bigger and better understanding of sometimes the next steps. So when you can communicate, and if you can communicate that to a victim of a crime, at least we're able to kind of give them, okay, this is how this is going to work. This is the normal. It's going to go to this person, and then they're going to continue the investigation. And a lot of the insights on that definitely was helpful. I really enjoyed my time as a detective.
So the detective role, are you above the detective role as a commander?
Yeah. So with most agencies, and ours included, a detective and patrol officer effectively hold the same level, same rank, if you will. So it wasn't necessarily a promotion, but more of like a lateral move. So when I promoted to sergeant a few years ago, and then I was the supervisor of the detectives, that would have been that kind of middle space there. So it's more of like the line level management. So you're sort of the first line of any supervision. And then the commander. So essentially, I oversee sergeants and in this case, patrol officers or detectives or whomever's, if they're out on the street doing something, then ultimately I'm responsible for the overall operations of the city. So I try to have to keep my ears open in a lot of different places and make sure everybody's got what they need as far as resources. And that's pretty much my biggest thing, is just making sure, like, letting my guys do their job, giving, if they need logistics or whatever they need resources, then that's my responsibility to make sure that they have them so they can complete their jobs as safely as possible.
So some of the police shows that we all watch, whether it be on YouTube or TV itself, a lot of times we see the 911 calls, or not just 911, even the pullovers. They escalate and they ask for a supervisor. Is that a commander in our situation?
So that would actually be the initial request would be for a sergeant.
Okay.
So I have on my squad, I have the patrol officers that are out, the ones fielding the calls. We have corporals. That's sort of like it's a smaller version of supervision. So they're part of our supervisory team. So they are kind of like the first line for any of the officers that are needing assistance. And then the sergeants, who there's two of them on our squads, that they're the ones that handle most of the day-to-day supervisory need roles. And if they need assistance, or if it's something that that I can help with, then we try to be as big of a team as we can. And I love getting out there and doing and trying to get back into the world and not just sit in an office all day. So it's fun to get out and about.
Well, and there's some efficiencies to that too, I'm sure, right?
Sure. So, and that's the beauty of any type of chain of command type of a structure. Everybody knows who they need to talk to, is if they have something going, if they have a problem, if they need help. It streamlines everything a lot better. But if you have a group that works well together, and like I said, I prided myself, and since I've become a supervisor, that I'll never ask anyone to do something that I wouldn't be willing to do myself. So
right.
If we're out on a crash scene, I'll grab the broom and start sweeping up the glass in the roadway, and just, if it needs to get done, I'd rather do it, and I'm not going to sit there and make everybody else do it while I'm sitting in the air conditioning. That's not fair for anybody. So
one of my favorite stories to tell about Duncan Finley, who was the CEO at Sarasota Memorial. Gosh, this was 20 plus years ago. Was that he walked down the hallway, saw a piece of paper, saw everybody walking past it, and walked over, didn't say, hey, stop and pick that up. He walked over and picked it up and threw it in the trash can. Sometimes leaders lead by example, and sometimes those examples are very quiet, but they have a loud thud. It was a loud thud for me, because I was always that prideful guy anyway. But when I realized that CEO of the hospital was doing the same exact thing and was leading that same way, it's very similar to what you're saying.
Sure. Yeah, I've always felt like that's the best way to go. It makes asking your people to do something much easier, because they say, okay, well, he's not just telling me this because he's the boss and so on. It's okay, well, hey, he would do it too. Right. I've personally, any of my supervisors, I've always gravitated towards the ones that I see, doing those things versus, just barking orders and, being more of a, I guess you can call it a manager versus a leader. I feel like there's big differences there. Yeah.
So can we talk a little bit about the education of a pullover?
Sure.
To the citizens of Northport? I don't think we talk nearly enough about the side of caution that you guys have to do on a pullover. First off, we have a lot of shaded windows down here, tinted. We have a lot of, unfortunately, we're in Florida, so we have a lot of coastline. So we have a lot of drug transportations. We know that we have we were 6th in human trafficking. I think we're number 3 now, which I hate, because I was trying to help us go down. Yeah. I don't want to go up that chart. Exactly. And I do a lot with CARE in Port Charlotte, but we need to talk about the engagement of an officer to the window of a pullover. Sure. Can you talk about that and the safety that you guys put in, and then also the engagement that the citizens should have with you to keep everything level?
Yeah. So, at the end of the day, a traffic stop has the potential to be one of the most dangerous encounters we have. Just because, you know, somebody's sitting in their vehicle, they have sort of the upper hand at that point where they're watching us approach their car. You know, we only have certain areas that we can take cover if something kind of breaks bad and doesn't end well. You know, our biggest focus as far as traffic enforcement is the safety of the person that's operating their vehicle and then everybody else around them. You know, so when we're coming up to the vehicle, we're looking for, you know, they call them furtive movements. So, you know, people are starting to reach down into the glove box, or it looks like they're tucking something under their seats. You know, we look for signs like that. And that kind of gives you the spidey senses. You know, you get the hair sticking up in the back of your neck, kind of a feeling. So once you get to the vehicle, I have always asked, you know, especially if someone that has really, really dark tinted windows, normally their driver window would be open by the time you approach. I ask them simply just to roll all the windows down, because you know, can't see if somebody's in the back seat or not. Again, it's just any aspect that we can get a little bit of an upper hand and making sure that we're sort of controlling the situation, you know, just so to make sure that we're being as safe as possible. You know, and with regard to, I guess, the overall encounter, you know, no one enjoys ruining somebody's day or giving them a hard time or, you know, making them late for work or their doctor's appointment or what have you. But obviously, at the point that we're stopping them, there's obviously something that's going on that has the potential to cause, you know, somebody injury. People driving too quickly, you know, it might, you know, speed limits are set by DOT that has done studies of how many, you know, the roadway, how fast can it be safely traveled upon based on the speed. So if those things are happening or somebody's not paying attention or being reckless, you know, the last thing that we want to do is have to go to that person's family and tell them that they've passed away because they crashed their vehicle and, you know, did something or harmed their family or anything like that. So, you know, that's the biggest thing. And I think a lot of sometimes, and you see this a lot on social media, you know, police are people too. So we're not trying to be rude. We're not trying to be mean or hateful or anything like that. It's a job. And, you know, we've all chosen this profession to try to make our world a bit of a better place. You know, so a lot of times if we're asking for the information, you know, for even just simply something as simple as asking someone for the driver's license and insurance, you know, we're just trying to identify who that person is and making sure that, you know, they are who they say they are and they're not trying to harm us or somebody else. It's something that is, and we find it a lot here, especially with lawful firearm owners. Again, in this area, we have a humongous support as far as the community is concerned. So many times I recall when I was on patrol, if you're conducting a traffic stop, this is before the constitutional carry law, when it was just having the concealed carry permit. But I've had tons of people say, hey, just so you know, I'm a concealed carry gun owner. My firearm is X, Y, you know, wherever it happens to be, on my person, in the center console. Here's my card, everything else. And it's great. You know, it's Florida, so we kind of figure that everybody has a firearm. That's just kind of
walk through the motion.
It's sort of the easier mindset to have.
Right.
But it's great to be able to have that person say, hey, listen, just so you know, here's where it is. And then it's something as simple as, okay, well, don't touch yours, I won't touch mine, and we're all gonna have a safe day. Right. So those kinds of interactions are they're really nice to have, because again, it puts everybody at a level of ease. You know, you see a lot of these videos online where, you know, the person is immediately argumentative, and it just turns into these situations that never needed to happen in the first place.
Right.
You know, sure, certain areas have a different mindset than others. Again, our community here, there's such a great amount of support for us that I think that reflects a lot in the interactions that we have with the motoring public, essentially. But sometimes, you know, people, I think, forget that police are people too. You know, most of us have, we all have families. Some of us have wives and kids and everything else. And, you know, as soon as I get out of work, you know, I'm in dad mode, and I'm, you know, I try to put it away. So this is, you know, it's just a job. So sometimes I think people forget that. And that's why I really enjoy a lot of the community engagement that we have, because I think we get to show that side more. It's hard to have that conversation when you pull the person over and they're late for work because you just stopped them. So being able to have those kind of conversations are fantastic.
And those situations can lead to escalations really quick.
Very much so. Yeah, and you
And
see him again. You see him on social media all the time.
all the time.
You know, somebody gets pulled over for rolling a stop sign because they weren't paying attention, and all of a sudden it goes a direction it didn't need to go, and it's an absolute shame. There's none of those situations that any officer ever wishes to be in ever.
Can we talk about the word comply? I think we get lost in that when we watch some of these shows because a lot of people don't understand what they should do and what they're required to do. So I'm going to ask you a question. Are you allowed to not show your ID if you're behind the wheel of a car if you're asked?
So you are legally required to present your identification when it's requested by an officer, and that is basically the consideration that the thought process is that operating a vehicle is a privilege, not a right. So when you get your driver's license, you sign all the paperwork that no one ever reads. Basically states in there that yes, you must present your driver's license when you are operating a vehicle to prove that you are eligible, and call it privilege, to operate a vehicle. The other of which is that if the officer asks the driver of a vehicle to step out of the vehicle, it's also something that we have the legal authority to make that request. Aside from that, it's mostly just what one would consider common sense of obviously don't start reaching around and doing all kinds of crazy things that make people nervous, because that obviously just doesn't help anybody.
And I don't want to talk about the things you shouldn't do, but you said earlier we ask that you roll down the windows. It's more of a safety thing, especially with the tinted windows of today. Is that a required thing to do, or is that just a simple request to see if you will?
That's not a requirement. Again, it's a simple, polite request.
It's safety.
Sure, and it's safety for myself as the officer, and it's safety for the person that's operating the vehicle. If they're not up to no good, no one ever wants to have I guess like a misunderstanding, or you would call it, or just something. It's a safer environment for everybody. It's just that unknown, that just walking up to the car at times, that unknown little compromises like that, if you want to call them, just kind of lowers the tension level a little bit for everybody involved, and then we're able to have more of a reasonable conversation about why we stopped that person.
So I'm gonna go to the walk up here in a minute, but how about car insurance? Required or not required?
It is required. So you are legally required to present your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance. Nowadays with smartphones, I have it as well. You can have it on your phone. So as long as if you have the whatever insurance carrier's app, you can have the proof of insurance on your phone as when you pull up the website or the app. That's fine. We don't mind. But yeah, a vehicle cannot legally be driven on the roadway if it is not insured. And again, it all goes back to protection, and that's protection for that person, because if they crash into somebody and they don't have insurance, that person is likely to be civilly sued for quite a bit of money. And it obviously also protects the other parties involved, where if the need for insurance is there, then we can be sure that everybody's protections are there.
So I want to go to the walk up, because I think this is the biggest part that the citizens need to hear. The outcomes of a walk up a lot of times are what you guys are perceiving as oh my gosh, and there has to be some hesitation almost on every single pullover, except some of the ones that you can identify, clearer windows, you can see inside the car. As you're walking up, nobody's reaching for anything, everybody's calm, cool, and collected, the windows down, they're ready to engage that way. That still doesn't mean everything's going to go perfectly. No, but at least that's the ultimate pullover, right?
It is, yeah. And we obviously are in anything we do. You never know anybody's intentions, so we always revert back to our training. And it's like anything else. If any people that do mixed martial arts, you can tell a lot of times when someone trains consistently, and that the air of confidence, the confidence that they have, it's because they know what they have. If they're not the ones that are ever going to be the problem. They kind of do their own thing. And for us being able to revert back to training, we're always kind of, our heads always on a swivel. And like you hear about police officers that are always, even on off duty, they're sitting in the corner of the restaurant so they don't have their backs to the doors and things like that. It's just things that it's basically ingrained in you, and you're just so used to it. So that, we always are going to make sure that we rely on our training. One of the biggest things, and in my opinion, it helps reduce a lot of the need for any type of an escalation, is verbal de-escalation. A lot of times you can, with some exceptions, you can typically reason with most anybody. And again, there might be that little immediate, angry, why'd you pull me over, everything. But if you're able to kind of diffuse that, have a super calm conversation, even if that person gets a citation at the end of the traffic stop, a lot of times it's all on how you present it. That's the biggest thing I think for us.
So I think I'm going to lean in here a little bit, because we do have turnover here. We don't have a huge amount of turnover, but we also have a lot of new police officers coming on the force.
Sure.
We've had some from the high school who have come through the high school graduation class, and then next thing I know, I look over and they're on the police force, and to me that's exciting, because
sure.
you now know that the kids are staying home. And our police force is growing, our city is growing, the job force is here, everything is changing there. But from your perspective, 2016 to mid career, 5 years in to now, what was your perspective on walking up to a car when you first started, and then till the mid and now and today?
Sure. So when I first started, I was in my later 20s. To start this job at 21 or 22 sounds a little bit interesting. It sounds a little daunting. So I was a little bit older when I started. The first few, definitely, it's especially after you complete your field training process. So for the first couple of months, you're with an experienced officer and kind of gradually increasing your level of independence, so that by the time you learn all your rules and regulations and all the safety and all the things. So typically there's multiple trainers that you sit with or ride with during that time. And everyone has their own way of doing things to a point, right? Like we all have to follow the same rules and regulations, but kind of how you go about it can change. So the nice thing about that is by the time you become a solo officer, independent on your own, you have at bare minimum 4 different people that you can pick and choose from. Oh, I like how he did this, but I don't, the other way wasn't like, I couldn't see myself saying something that way. And it lets you really hone in and kind of individualize how you want to do things. So yeah, for the first couple of years, it definitely got a little, there was definitely some instances where, it was a little sketchy, having to walk up to certain things. And
sure.
It's something that I think you just get used to after a while. The biggest thing is just to make sure that no one becomes complacent. That is the time that people will inevitably get hurt the most. So as long as you keep that same level of awareness, realistically, wherever you are, it's not a foolproof method, but you have a better shot of coming out on the better end of it. Now it's, if I stop somebody now, same level of awareness. But again, it's one of those things where you do it enough times that you get the routine down of how you normally go about things, depending on what side of the vehicle you like to approach, your opening line, if you want to call it that, however that is, it just becomes ingrained that, it's something that you just do over and over.
And we have the get over one lane on a double lane or triple lane road.
Sure.
People are supposed to get over away from the pullover itself. If they're not, what is it? 20 miles below or what is it?
Offhand, I think it's 25 miles below the posted speed limit, which
right.
is it can be challenging to do at times.
Yeah. And not only that, but there's it's kind of a double-edged sword there, because there's a safety factor that comes into play if you slow down too quick.
Sure.
You
got to hope the person behind you is equally as paying attention.
Yep. So, all those things they come into play, but sure. Those are all the things that you guys go through training for.
Right.
Can you talk about the training and how often that happens with the police officers?
So, the basic, your initial training is your academy, and that's typically a 6-month program. and that starts you from the ground up. That they teach you all about legal and all your defensive tactics and your firearms training, case law, and just there's a multitude of things that you go through and learn, so that way you have at least some sense of an idea of when you're actually going to either apply for a police department, or some agencies, like where my previous agency actually sponsored me. They had hired me and they sponsored me and paid me to go to the academy, which was fantastic. Once you get hired on by an agency, everyone's a little bit different, but most have a bulk of time for onboarding, and however they want to refer to it. It's almost like a mini academy again, but now you're sort of learning it the Northport way versus a lot of municipality, or a lot of academies are combined of a bunch of different municipalities. So each individual police department's way of doing things might be a little bit different. So that's where you kind of get a little bit of a refresher, depending on how long it was from when you graduated the academy to getting hired by an agency.
Right.
And then for in-house training, we have a dedicated training unit that puts on a lot of different things. We qualify with our firearms annually. We have additional trainings throughout the year to make sure that it's a perishable skill. So we make a point to practice as often as we can. We go to the range on our off time if we can as well. And then other things for highlight. They focus on several different items of training annually, so every year, for the bigger things, like for vehicle operations or defensive tactics and things like that. So it's one of those things where we all wish we could do it more. Sometimes just the challenging part is making sure that we have staffing to work our normal day to day, where we'd all love to do the training. There's a lot of people that that train in mixed martial arts off duty. Those types of things. Again, having that confidence and having those types of skills makes you a better officer, no matter what position you hold.
So I want to point something out to people too, that a lot of the shows that are out there, where you guys don't get a lot of credit, I don't think is the calm before the storm.
Mm-hmm.
Your de-escalation of situations, where I've watched Northport do it too.
Mm-hmm.
But I've watched a lot on TV. A lot of the shows are starting to show it and starting to emphasize it now, where the patience is almost unbelievable of the police officers. It is not pull your gun out and shoot first and ask questions. There's a level of a huge level of control that you guys have to not shoot first and ask questions later, isn't it? There?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that no one ever wants to have to take it to any point when it comes to escalating a situation. I mean, frankly, getting punched in the face hurts, and I don't enjoy it. I'd rather be able to have that conversation with somebody, and if it means sitting down and talking with that person for a minute, if it's safe to do so. And that's the biggest thing I think even police officers at times forget. The person is in the state that they're in for a reason. Can't think. I mean, obviously, if somebody is suffering from a mental illness where they can't help it, I mean, that's something that's a little bit different. But most people, it's hey, this a major life event just happened, and that's why we're engaging with that person. We don't ever, with the exception of going to the 5-year-old boy's birthday party, we're going to talk to people and engage with people on probably one of their worst days. So yeah, having that understanding, and because that whole concept of yes, cops are people too. Well, we want to make everybody has that should have that same level of understanding, us included. Having that presence of mind to say, okay, well, this person's not acting this way just because they might have just lost a family member, they might have just gone through a divorce. Those types of major life events, even for someone that's never had an outburst, so to speak, like that, that can do that to anybody. So having that level of understanding, I think, gives you that level of patience. And the longer you do this job, I think the more you get. It's pretty interesting. Yeah, there's been times where we've sat and talked with people after having a screaming match back and forth, and then we talk for 20 minutes, and then that person says why they're upset, and you end up actually having a positive experience at the end of it, opposed to having it go in fighting in handcuffs and all the crazy stuff.
Well, you know that the I bring this up because TV has a dramatic side of it. They like viewership, so it's not that these things happen 24/7 every call you go on.
No,
They all have the potential, but one of the things my wife is always wondering is there training for what you guys do is on the patient's level, because it seems like it's at a different level. It's not it's really not uh, every person is not built for that.
sure.
Um, so I'm wondering, do you guys go through a training specifically for that on the engagement side of it and kind of work that backwards?
So with regards to patients, not necessarily. I think with the training of verbal de-escalation, um, there's like critical stress trainings and things like that if we're dealing with someone that, for example, has schizophrenia or something, all those types of situations. There's much more understanding nowadays of, with regards to psychology than there was, even 10, 15 years ago. Just the amount of things that we have that we encounter and that we deal with. We've had trainings with dealing with people on the autism spectrum, which
Yep.
sometimes can be very difficult because we're obviously not doctors. So unless another party there has the doctor's note that says this is what this person is suffering from, it might not be that overt and obvious. So we've kind of had at least a lot. We've had the opportunities to have several trainings that go along with things like that, to be able to at least identify in general terms of kind of how we should approach this conversation. We try to keep as low, calm of a voice as we can, because all of a sudden, if we start yelling and screaming, that's just going to amplify that person's state, and that's not going to do anybody any good. We try as best we can, and you hit the nail on the head where the uses of force and things like that. I'm far from a use of force expert, but they do not happen every call, right? Like the amount of times that does happen is minuscule compared to the number of encounters that we have on a daily basis, and you multiply that times a year, and the true number of how many times anything like that actually occurs is very, very minimal. But a lot of like you said, people like drama and all that kind of stuff. So of course they're not going to film the officer helping the couple that's been arguing and trying to come up with a reasonable solution. They want the one where it turns into something unfortunate based on 5 seconds of a body cam video that you haven't seen the 3 hours prior to. That makes it very different.
I'm just glad you're not in it for the ratings, Commander. I'm just glad.
No,
go ahead.
No, I always laugh when people, even when they just say thank you, and again, it's nice to hear, but none of us did this to feel, to have people approach you all day and say thank you. We appreciate the support. We genuinely do, and we need it. It's something that is big, and you see law enforcement agencies that do not have that kind of support from their community. It makes their job infinitely harder, because now they're dealing with, whether it be mistrust, just anger and resentment. It makes it even that much more difficult to do your job safely and correctly. So having the backing of our citizens is absolutely fantastic. I couldn't be happy about that.
And I have to have fun with you here for a moment, because I grew up in the early 60s, was born in the early 60s. So I've got to ask, the police officers always had a donut in their hand and a cup of coffee. What's your favorite donut?
My favorite donut was maple bacon donut.
Oh my gosh. Fantastic.
Absolutely. I try not to have too many of them. I try to hit the treadmill instead, but everyone's got their weaknesses at times.
That should be an automatic question when you roll down your window when you get pulled over. Hey, but sometimes that can be misconstrued too as a sarcasm. But it's a good icebreaker.
Absolutely.
You've come a long way in your career. You've done a whole lot in your career. Where are you looking to go after 9 years? Where's your next step?
I'm honestly not certain. I've kind of found my little niche back again. I really enjoy having the ability to have more of an impact on my environment. I think that's one of the biggest things. I don't know if I'd ever want to be a chief. Frankly, I think that's entirely too much stress for for me. But again, I've noticed that having the ability to have more of an impact. I mean, we all spend more time at our jobs than we do at home. That's kind of a fact, I
True.
think, for everybody. Not just law enforcement, all across the board. Even before I got in this, it was the same thing. So I really like the ability to have a bigger input, and because it's not like that. It's not as though anyone's input isn't received or appreciated, but as you kind of go up the line a little bit, the drapes, the curtains open a little bit more, and you're exposed to more. You might not know as a 1-year patrol officer what happens in a staff meeting that people are talking about, and me being able to be a part of certain meetings like that, you just are able to have that conversation. I really enjoy meeting with my team and saying, hey, what do you guys need? What are we looking for? Because then I can report that up, and that way we're all on the same page. So I don't know. We'll see where things go, but so far I'm enjoying the ability to have that impact as best I can.
What do you tell? What would you say to a new police officer, or a thought of being a police officer?
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell them about starting their career?
The biggest thing, and this is something that I've learned from mentors, in my career, is don't forget who you are as a person. Again, people tend to think that, and I've seen it before, where the badge gets to somebody's head and now they think that there's some, big importance of power. And it's like with anything. As soon as somebody becomes a doctor, they're going to have that air about them, or someone becomes a lawyer, So yes, we do have a lot of power. That's something that, but at the same token, like was it Uncle Ben from Spider-Man? With great power comes great responsibility. You are responsible for a lot, and that is not a small task. So having that core moral foundation, you really can't go wrong. As long as you're making a decision that's legal, ethical, and moral, then you have a chance at a great career. Having a personal life and hobbies and things like that is one of the most important things. Also, is again, we are here 12 hours a day. It's can get long and grinding shifts. Having the ability when you go home, being able to shut that switch off. Whether it's like sports, music, woodworking, anything, or spending time with your families, that really grounds you and kind of allows you to be a person again. Because sometimes you get so ingrained in the day-to-day grind of this job, and it can not overwhelm, but it can really monopolize a lot of your time and your emotions.
So you've got the start of your career being in Fort Lauderdale.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of our young guys that are starting through the high school, they start here local.
Sure.
And they don't have that. And I hate to say it like this because we are becoming a bigger city,
mm-hmm.
but they don't have that big city feel of their experience level.
Sure.
Not that they're missing out on anything, but do you think that enhanced a lot of your leadership roles and having that diverse background from different communities?
Sure. So I think the amount of exposure is very helpful. And again, not that I wish that Northport had that amount of exposure. Don't get me wrong.
Correct.
I'm quite happy with with how the things are here. But yeah, I learned from a lot of people that went through it even before I did. And that's, I think, one of the biggest things for us is the mentoring side, where just because a brand new officer may not have, gone through that themselves, we do a lot of, like, we'll call it scenario-based training. And, sometimes even just saying, hey, what would you do in this situation? You don't have to physically role play it out, but you can say, if I gave you a scenario or what you were driving up to, how would you react? What would you do? What would be going through your head? And at least while they may not have necessarily been in the moment and done it, at least they've been able to play that in through their head and have a general idea of at least how they're going to react to it. I think, again, I don't wish by any stretch that right. we had the amount of exposure. It's a quite nice place to work, so I don't want to have to jeopardize that, I guess. And I don't want to jinx it, and all of a sudden this becomes a crazy city 2.0. But it was helpful, I think, just to have that different level of experience and exposure. I try to pass that on to as many people as I can that I work with, because it's only going to make everybody better at the end of the day.
So you brought up some, and I did too, with the mental health side of things and interactions there with citizens that may have some mental issues happening, or some stressors in their life that instantly change the behaviors.
Sure.
Um, can you talk a little bit about and we've got about 6 minutes left, which I hope you think this went quickly, like I
It did
said.
actually.
But can you talk about the aftercare, or the even during career care that you guys do with each other on the mental side of things?
Sure. I think nowadays it's much different. Right? I mean, even 10 years ago, um, openly speaking about one's mental health was really not a norm, and especially in careers like this, whether it be law enforcement, military, you weren't really looked upon as a strong person. Whereas now, I think it's actually the opposite. I think it takes a stronger person to say, "Hey, I've got something going on. I need help," versus sitting at home and stewing in it by yourself.
Complete flip.
Yeah. So we've really, I think, come around as a society in general, not just us, but I think we're a little slower at that at times. I think we still, there's still that prideful, "Oh, I'm fine, I can handle it." Because we see some things that no average person should ever see, and quite frankly, I don't think the human brain is really capable of of dealing with sometimes.
Yep.
It is definitely helpful, I think, to be able to have someone to talk to about it, whether that be friends, family. A lot of it, we'll talk amongst each other, where it's just, "Hey, this is kind of how I'm feeling about it." We have a critical incident stress management team that's comprised of members of our department. So for major traumatic incidents, they'll actually come out, and they have some additional trainings that they're not mental health professionals, but it's just more of like a peer counseling group. They'll come out and they'll speak to the officer or whomever that witnessed whatever it happened to be, and it really is about taking care of our own. We've come a long way from the hiding in your room with the bottle of whiskey kind of mentality that
Yep.
all the old guys used to, "Hey, I can get through this and it's not going to be a big deal." We have a long career. It's 20 to 30 years, basically, depending on what retirement system you work in. So, the amount of critical incidents that one engages in or is even a part of, that adds up after a while. It's super important. There's books, the emotional survival for law enforcement. I think that's pretty much a must read for anyone that goes into the academy. It even just prepares you mentally for kind of how to be able to navigate some things and what you might experience. And spouses too. Sometimes that's actually the hardest part, where we come home after a long day and don't want to talk about it because this is how it goes, and then it never gets talked about. And that's where, unfortunately, sometimes you have situations where it goes to the extreme, and then everyone starts talking, which is it's a shame that major things like that have to happen in order for us to be able to talk about our feelings sometimes.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the badge and first responders badges, and the not just you but fire departments, the doctors in trauma, you've got nurses in trauma, you got techs in trauma, all these, and I was in trauma, so I'm when I listen to you, I think back of my career, when I worked a level 1 trauma center, and
Sure.
by no chance am I comparing what you guys see front line to what we see second line, because
It's still a lot, though. There's no doubt about
it
it.
is. It is.
It might be different, but it's equal as far as the severity of it. Absolutely.
It is, and it's nice to be able to talk, even now,
Yep.
because even for me, while you're talking, my memory starts playing back what I saw, and what my hands were in, and what I did, and all the things, and that stuff doesn't go away, and there is a passion, for a lot of people. There's also some just some downright memory that they don't want to dig up anymore.
Yep.
They don't want to think about it, and
Sure.
when it comes to all the changes and everything that's happening, I think you yourself have to be very proud of the fact that as a society we've kind of bumped that along a little bit.
It is yeah, it's great. You see just the amount of people that are able to talk about things like that now, just to get it out in the world. And it makes, the person next to them may not have wanted to say something, but all of a sudden they say, oh, well, he's talking about it. I guess I could talk about it too.
Talk about
and
too.
that domino effect, everyone's able to at least get a little bit out. Whether or not you're going to have, a full healing in one day, it's not going to happen, but at least having the ability to get a little bit of it out, starting that way, and, it makes it easier for sure.
Well, I got to tell you, thank you. We're at the end of our time here, but I appreciate you coming on and having this discussion. And I look forward to doing another show with you or live stream with you in the near future. And I appreciate your day.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. It was a great time.
All right, buddy. This is John Rawlings with WKDW saying thank you for listening in, and please share this content. It is very valuable to get this information out to the citizens of Northport and surrounding areas. Thank you and have a blessed day.